I use Apple Maps. Google is sometimes difficult to.
Yeah.
I don't like how it graphically shows you where to go.
Why not?
It seems like when I turn it on, the like the blue line or the line that you're supposed to follow, it gets confusing when you're in heavy traffic, like when you're in a Mixmaster or you're somewhere. So I just turn it off.
Yeah.
You ever turn it completely off?
No. The only time I'm pretty dependent on it now, even for like short trips. If I know where I'm going, I'll still use it because a lot of times they'll give you shortcuts. And for some reason, if it cuts off 2 or 3 minutes, that feels good to me to have know that I'm saving 2 or 3 minutes getting to where I'm going.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'll tell you, like the one time I remember I was in Denver, we were building all the stores out there and had been out there numerous times, like flown into Denver airport, got a car, drove to this one location, did it multiple times. And anyways, I got there, for whatever reason, my phone died. And nobody in the store we were building, nobody had a charger. Yeah. And so I was like, and I had to get back to the airport. And I was like, shit, I don't know what to do, because I couldn't remember how to drive back to the airport. So I literally had to go find an AT&T store and get a charger, charge my phone up so I could use maps to get back.
Yeah.
But I notice that a lot now where I'm just dumb. I'm GPS dumb.
Well, I was short article said you got to turn that off because it will exercise your brain in a way that you're too dependent. Like you're telling this computer's telling you what to do versus you just kind of finding and feeling your way, whether it's a gut reaction or whether you know where you're going and you're just trial and error. But
when you're not as observant of what's going on outside of you either, really, or looking for landmarks or roads,
that's right.
Like you used to be with maps,
So on vacation, mostly we'll just I'll turn it off. That'll make me be more aware of my surroundings.
Yeah.
Makes me think my brain's getting smarter.
So if you fly somewhere and you've got to make it to the hotel and you've never been there before, how are you getting directions to the hotel?
Through my phone.
I guess there's probably a way you could do it old school where it just gives you the directions. You're not following the map. It's like turn on this and 0.3 miles, turn on that road. So that way you're having to look, because like right now, I don't even notice street signs. I'm just like, oh, I got to turn. Oh, there's the road I'm going to turn. Yeah. I'm not even noticing street signs.
Even without the phone, I always forget street signs. I'll go by just kind of, wayfinding or just targets in the street that I remember.
Yeah.
In Europe, we haven't traveled as a family in a while, but that was especially good and difficult, right? Because the streets are just like not gridded, and they especially Italy, and so we would put away the maps and just try to find our way through the streets. It was pretty cool, but
yeah. Sometimes it's fun just to kind of explore. A lot of times when you're going, like I was in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago and trying to find an Airbnb late at night, and maps didn't work. Sometimes if you're downtown, I guess the signal gets blocked and it didn't work. So I was like, okay, I had to switch over to just directions and follow the streets because the map part didn't work. So
the other thing we did, a few years ago, we took a family trip. We drove from here to Maine. Or no, we flew into Manhattan. From Manhattan, we drove all the way up to Maine, Rhode Island, up in there. But we bought a paper map.
Yeah.
Put down everything. We bought a paper map and, navigated through that way. It was pretty good.
That's a great idea, actually.
They're hard to find, though.
Yeah.
You could go on the old truck stops or, gas stations.
Mapsco or the Atlas.
Yeah.
Big. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, starting out, I traveled a lot starting out, and we would photocopy either atlases or the maps.
Oh, that's
books.
right. We print them out. Yeah,
you print them out, and then you'd highlight the route.
Yeah,
and sometimes we tape pages together so you could have a longer, But
whenever I'd travel from Texas to Southern California, that's what I would do. Or you could list it, like you could list all the turns at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think Google's out or something. It was a long time ago. but that's one of those efforts, right? That's like those rituals that you try to do to keep your mind sharp, keep your body moving, keep all your navigation skills intact. Those little things that maybe it's like this self-awareness that, I'm not losing it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, on a day like today, when we sat down, we were just talking, our cell service is down across the board. And so maps, if you're out and about, your maps aren't working.
Yeah. Did you have a slight panic?
No. Well, no, because I was coming here. But now with my Tesla, it's got a different network.
Oh.
So the maps worked on the Tesla.
Yeah.
Because it's got its own network, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, today would be an interesting day if you're going to use your phone. Not
in a slight panic because you didn't know how to get here, but mostly I was thinking through my day. I was like, shit, how are people going to contact me? Yeah. How am I going to reach out? Yeah. And because my day's changed a little bit.
It might be a nice day, kind of a low key day.
Just leave. It's going to be 80 degrees.
Yeah, I'm going to try to go find some Wi-Fi to get on to do, we got meetings today and we'll do most of those over Teams and need Wi-Fi to do that. But so I know one thing that, we were talking about kind of as a topic for today was kind of diving into our backgrounds and just how did we get started. Had a few people kind of in various different forms of feedback say, hey, it'd be nice to understand kind of who you guys are, where you got started, how your career progressed to where it is now.
Yeah. How do you think that, I was thinking of our mindsets, right? We're similar in a lot of ways, but we're different. How do you think, can you point back and, your childhood, or can you point back to when you started understanding or gravitating to a certain, maybe it's personality, but just kind of like a way of thinking? Do you know when that happened?
You mean like my current, like how did my current operate?
Was there a light bulb?
That's a great question. The best way I can explain it when I think about it now. So I grew up an only child, and my grandparents adopted me when I was real young, and during that, from 0 to about maybe 6 years old, I moved around a bunch, and that's just because my biological parents weren't fully equipped to raise a kid. Mm-hmm. For a lot of different reasons. And so I bounced around with different family members and stuff, but I ended up permanently with my grandparents on my mom's side. And I think that I was like a nervous child, and I was kind of on guard all the time. The only way I can relate that back is because things change so much, And so self-conscious, I was one of the smaller kids in class, but I had my grandfather, AKA my dad, was a really strong personality. Like really, he was an entrepreneur, big guy, loud voice. He was the patriarch of the family. And so he was my first kind of example of what a man looks like, or what, that was my example of what a man's like. But I would contrast that against myself. And I didn't, I never felt that confident. I was, and so, I think it was probably somewhere around, somewhere in probably high school, I started making the decision, well, I'm going to change. I want to be more like that. And then, so that early aspiration to be more confident and be more like him kind of started, and I think that manifested itself in me hanging around different people in high school, like the tougher guys, the guys who like to fight and everything. So I gravitated more to be around them, maybe as an example. And then really going into college, starting to understand that, okay, I can do different things to change the way I am. I can practice certain things to be who I want, more like who I'd want to be. And then, getting into construction, again, I had an example from my dad and other men in my family who were in construction about how, early on, it was very confrontational. Construction was very confrontational. My examples that I had of it. And I wasn't like that at all. But then, in my early 20s, I thought, well, I'm going to have to be more like that if I'm going to be successful. If I'm going to, and the way I describe it now would be like, if I'm going to be able to motivate people in a certain way and get them to do what I need to do, I need to toughen up. I need to have thicker skin. I need to be able to have confrontation with people. So then from my early 20s, probably into my early 30s, I thought a lot about how to be confrontational.
Yeah.
And I practiced it. Literally took note. It's funny you bring that up because I was looking at journals. I've always kept journals, and I was looking back, 10, 15 years ago, about 15 years ago of notes I was taking about, okay, I had a really good conversation with this guy where we kind of got into a fight and I held my own. Like it's really, it sounds funny saying that now, but I was developing, really, I think I was developing a certain level of confidence where I could carry myself in different situations, especially, verbally, I never really cared about being physically tough or anything. Like I never wanted to be a fighter or anything like that, but it's more like being able to handle myself in a verbal interaction where I had to hold my own. And then
that takes a unique brain too, though, because you can be verbally aggressive in a way, but not make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And
so not move the needle at all.
It takes some word play and some understanding of the moment to put the words together to make people move.
Yeah. And I'll tell you that whole thing culminated in, I'm trying to think how old I was, probably in my mid 30s, I guess. We were doing a job here in Austin, and we were having an issue with a fire sprinkler contractor. And it was getting towards the end of the project. We had to get him to perform to be able to pass final inspections. And so for whatever reason, I decided that my superintendent and I were going to hop in a car and drive to his office and, jump his ass, meaning like, you're going to come and perform and whatever else. And so I walked in this guy's office and, his receptionist was there and we're here to see so-and-so. I forgot the guy's name now. And she took us back to his office and we both sat down and he's across his desk and, I start saying, hey, look, you're going to get your ass out on this job and you're going to finish. I mean, I don't know why you're fucking around like this. He's like, who are you to come in here and do that? Like, cause I was aggressive. And I was like, I'm the guy that's going to write your check.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, hell no. He goes, no, and he started getting flustered and he started like opening drawers. And at that moment I was like, oh, I really screwed up here. And so we were like, oh, hey, listen, okay, we're good. And we got up and left. And I felt like such a dumbass after that, going, who am I to go into some guy's office and start jumping his ass?
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized that this work I've been doing all these years is not the best path of being able to motivate people.
Yeah.
And so then I became a student of like influence and collaboration and there's definitely ways you can get people on your side to do things that you need them to do without raising your voice and without getting angry. Now, it still happens periodically.
Yeah.
I think there's there's definitely a place for friction. Kind of like we call it now. It's dynamic tension with teams or with other people. I think is good sometimes. It's good to have friction, but I don't think there's any room for losing control and having this an all-out screaming match and just getting real unskillful with it, right?
Yeah.
So going back to your first question, I think that I've got a certain operating style now that I've built over the years of trying to be collaborative with people and trying to because we're in the business of influencing people to share a common vision to get a team of people to a certain destination together, and that looks like a project coming together. Right.
Yeah.
So, I like to think I'm a lot better now at doing that with the practice and all that. But,
at what point in your career, and maybe it's arrived, maybe it hasn't arrived, did you realize your gift? Like, what is your gift?
I've always said my gift is that my ambition outweighs my ability.
Yeah.
Sure. I think that my gift is I learned how to get certain things, and I learned how to find things. I learned how to, I learned how to make decisions quickly. to be able to create action.
Yeah.
But I don't think I have any inherent gifts or anything that's very unusual from anybody else, other than I know how to focus and go after kind of what I want.
Yeah. Well, there's a gift of being a leader and implementing that in a series of ways, not just, verbally, but there's actions that you do that allow people to want to follow.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what we talk about here in this podcast sometimes. And I, me personally, I lose sight of it sometimes, right? Because if you kind of sit down and you and you reimagine the people that are around you, and that's a lot of people around you specifically, and they're all waiting on your movement, your posture, your verbal reaction, your guidance, and whatever that is, it draws people toward you, and it allows people to move in a way that gives them confidence. And I think it's important to remember when you're in that position, because oftentimes I'm just, for me myself, I'm like, shit, I just want to sit here and slack off a little bit. But then, or whatever it is in the moment, because it sometimes it will become tiring because you're tasked so often throughout the day and the week and the months. But it's important to understand what that gift is, right? And what that gift is, where it stemmed from, and then how do you rejuvenate that gift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to hear your take on that too. What you think that is for you?
Well, as you were talking, I was like, man, I've always been a curious individual. My parents are, my dad's a banker. He's a president of a bank or vice president of a bank. Underneath the owners, my mom was a county auditor for 30 years of Ellis County. They're both confident individuals. My dad was an athlete. He played a lot of baseball, a little bit of football. So he had a swagger. He was always, a leader in his class, and he was a really good athlete, and did well in his career. And my mom never went to college. She had us and was a mom, but she worked. So both of them worked continuously. Never, no, we didn't have stay-at-home parents. We weren't wealthy growing up, and so there's a grittiness to my family. There's definitely a swagger. There's definitely confidence there, but it's very quiet. Like no one yelled, no one, was aggressive. Everything was fairly soft spoken, but there was a line when you crossed it, then it was game time, right?
Yeah,
then
sure.
And my dad would always talk about, back then you just fought, right? If you had a confrontation with another person, you just fought. And I remember, there's one time when I was small, it's probably like 8 or 9. I remember they dropped me off, and I was playing tackle football. And, it was back then, you have crappy equipment and everything. But anyway, they were late picking me up because they had to work. And there's these 3 kids that rode up on their bicycle. And I was sitting there by myself trying to, not be noticed. But it was like a big playground. I was just sitting there by myself. So the 3 kids rode up on their bicycles, and they started bullying me. And I didn't really know what to do. And I didn't feel confident. And anyway, they had my shoulder pads, and they were running over my shoulder. Like they were just being dicks.
Yeah.
And my dad showed up, and then the little boys, they rode off on their bicycles, and I was all flustered, and I think I was crying. And he said, well, what just happened here? And I said, well, I didn't know what to do. And they wanted to fight. They were bullying me. And so anyway, he stopped the car and we called him over and he said, all right, y'all are going to take them on one by one. And so, that happened. And so I think it was, there was not a need for conflict, but whenever conflict arose, it was definitely you go first, right? If so, and I think that's always stayed with me in a way, and I don't, we're talking about conflict and how do you approach this verbal attack or not attack, but how are you, it's always easy to talk when things are favorable and nice, but how do you approach conflict?
Yeah.
And that's a real long life lesson that is hard to understand when you can be confident in those moments. But I think that it stemmed back then to know, well, I think that whenever those occasions arise, then no matter how it comes out, it has to come out.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come out the right way, or if you don't react the right way, then you'll do better next time. And it's just like this gradual motion of confidence.
Yeah.
And, and I don't know that, I had any particular pathway or understanding of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. I was always kind of a free spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately after high school, I was ready to go. And I knew I wanted to go to UT. That's all I wanted to do, because my folks were UT fans. And I was an athlete. I always did good. I had great grades, never had, any issue with that. And, but I like to get in trouble, and so I went to summer school at UT and I bombed. And that was the first time I ever failed anything in my life. And my parents never really said anything, but I knew they were disappointed. And then it set me on the right trajectory. And I just kind of floundered in school and studied anything that I thought I needed to, and went from marine biology to physical therapy to chemistry to, then I had a girlfriend at the time. She was a lot smarter than I was. And she said, man, you should look at this thing called architecture. And in Waxahachie, I had no idea what architecture was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I had said the word in my life. And I took a class, and at the time I went from that summer school in UT to Southwest Texas. It was Southwest back then. And then from there I went to UTA Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
And took an architecture program there. And it was horrible. I loved it, but I was terrible. And even my professor said, "You'll never make it."
What did you love about it back then? Like, it was
hard. Like, it was a puzzle.
Okay.
It was a lot of problem solving. I had no idea what I was doing. Everybody else was like way more advanced than I was. Even like these models that we had to put together, I started and I had like duct tape, and it was just ugly and, terrible. But it was this challenge of like, man, I'm really terrible at this. I've never really been terrible at anything in my life. And so maybe I was stubborn, right? So I wanted to perfect this thing that I kept doing. And the architecture is all about problem solving. And so I think that challenged my brain enough to where I couldn't really conquer it. Maybe it's like golf or something. I'm not a golfer, but you're never really you're never really getting to a point where you think, oh, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
There's always criticism. There's always doing it better. There's always a way of redoing the puzzle. even now, in this stage of my career, like it's always could be done better.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think it was probably that to where I thought, man, this is pretty cool, but very hard. I don't know where it's going to go. Um, and I kept with it, and it was probably more of a, being curious and being stubborn at the same time, because it was so challenging. I wouldn't quit. Never quit. I was never allowed to quit anything in my life, which is, is a good thing. But I just stuck with it because I was stubborn. And, I think, over the course of time, there was a confidence that built and built and built. And I don't, even after undergrad. So eventually I transferred to Texas A&M and graduated there. Even after A&M, I worked for a while and had no idea what architecture was, and just kind of moved around and floundered, and then got the opportunity to move to Hawaii and moved out there for 6 years.
And what brought you out there?
A girlfriend. I followed a girlfriend out there. We arrived and she, it didn't work out. She left, I think maybe it was but almost 6 months.
And were you involved in architecture out there?
Yeah.
Did you get a job?
I got a good job. What that also made me do was learn how to, but whenever I moved there, the economy in Hawaii was terrible. They were at the time more reliable on the market in Japan and everything, in the Pacific realm. And it was just flat. There was no one doing anything. And there was maybe a handful, maybe 15, there's probably more, but, like 15 offices doing work in Hawaii. And that community was pretty strong in a way. If you were in the community, they were supportive. For me, I was a white person, outsider. And, that's tough in its own to be white and move into Hawaii. It's not, there's a big wall immediately. And so what it made me do is to learn how to sell myself and to learn how to understand the system that I was playing in. And it wasn't my system, it was somebody else's.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of that was me understanding how to move conversation. And because I had to survive in a way that wasn't particularly related to architecture, I knew I wanted to be in that field, but I went from construction, I went from doing interior materiality kind of stuff, and then hotels and whatever I could do. I just kind of bounced from office to office to office, and I was mostly contract labor because no one would hire. And it turned out being really nice and fun. And, eventually I was accepted and known, and I made a name for myself as much as I could at that level. But it wasn't necessarily about work at that point. It was mostly, I really enjoyed surfing. And so I would spend morning and night in the water.
You were working so you could go surf.
Yeah, that was it. And that was a culture, though. Like that was a part of the culture. Their pace is very slow. They enjoy life, and when the waves in the ocean is good, people go, and that's the best place to put together your construction team of any kind, because all your trays are out there in the water. But after 5 or 6 years of that, I think I just hit a point, and it was almost like a light bulb where I thought, man, there's not too much for me here professionally. And I remember, during the course of my career in Hawaii, I was moving up and had more opportunity to to work on various types of buildings, and I thought, I don't really know a whole lot about, stylistically what everything means and how you put it together, but I knew that there was a certain limitation of what we could do design wise and architecturally in Hawaii that I wasn't particularly satisfied with. So I made myself leave and go to Southern California to get a master's.
Okay.
And until then, that was like 2003. Until then, I didn't really, after that master's, I had a dean that kind of whipped my ass into shape, and it was heavily based on theory, but it wasn't theory just as a sense of fluff. It was more so theory. If you can think it, you need to build it. So it was very hands-on. And this dean was, is just kind of Gilbert Cook. He came from Cal Poly, and I always gravitated to the gruff, just be straightforward. And so he was that, and I think he whipped my ass into shape and challenged me in a way that I had never been challenged in architecture. And it was that was the moment when the light bulb came on. and I wasn't even thinking about it. And I was first in my class in cum laude and magna cum laude. And I got to give this really nice presentation of this really famous building by Louis Kahn, on the Pacific. It was really beautiful. So there's a lot of success there that I can point to say that's when my career light bulb came on. That's when a lot of confidence came within me, and I kind of knew what I was doing, and I knew what route I wanted to go, and I knew who I wanted to surround myself with. And there was a moment where I had to write a book, a thesis, and deliver this, huge project at the very end. There was this guy from, I don't know, he's from Harvard or Yale. They have these big critics that they fly in and they want to criticize your work, right? They challenge you in order to make you talk and prove out your ideas. And that moment, Gil had told me, this guy wants a job here, and so he was peacocking,
Okay,
right, and so he challenged me in a way that I just didn't think was right, and it was basically rude and disrespectful, and we got into a heated moment in front of probably 50 people at least,
okay,
and in front of the dean and all the admin folks. And I say that because it was one of the, it was like a big public forum that some of the well-known architects in Southern California were there. And I remember them saying, it was like this crowd, like, go get it. It was it's kind of a funny moment, but it was one of those confident moments where there was this verbal attack where I felt confident enough to challenge him and win the debate. And I think those moments are real interesting in a way, because you can point back to that and say, well, maybe I lost my cool, or I didn't say it how I particularly wanted to say it, but it was a moment where I stepped forward and I did this thing that was uncomfortable.
Yeah,
because that's not my nature. And then from there, I think I got here, but that personality difference, like what you were talking about, has always been there. It's always in there from when we were kids. It's kind of interesting to see what that common thread is, and how it just matures, really.
Yeah.
So I asked you what your gift was. I think that I'm just finally understanding what that is. And I think it's similar to you in that, I think my gift, especially in my office, is knowing how talk to people as individuals and knowing how to talk to them as a group and getting everybody to move.
Yeah.
Without too much threat and without too much dissatisfaction on anyone's plate.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a good or a bad conversation, I'm pretty comfortable in those moments to get people to understand what the reality of the situation is.
Yeah.
Whether I'm having to fire someone or whether I'm having to hire or praise someone, or whether or not we're trying to get them to do better in a particular way. It's always about them and hopefully them understanding that this is your idea. You're here. You're sitting right here.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I make you understand how to move and be successful?
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't claim to be I don't really do production or draw. I still am in this design realm, and I get to be in all the conversations, but it's an interesting kind of format to think about. Is I've got this envelope of responsibility. I think I'm pretty good at this moment, and that's how I'll make my office successful. Take it to the next step. So,
do you still think about kind of how you operate? And are there things you're still trying to improve or tweak about how you show up or how you interact or how effective you are? I mean, do you still have these little things you're like, okay, you know what I mean? Is that
heck yeah?
Is that kind of an ongoing?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know anyone that's ever. Well, I'll probably never be resolved at where I am. So I think I'm always trying to be more honest in the situation. And my default is to make everyone happy. Yeah. And if someone's in conflict, then I want to fix it. And it could be to the sacrifice of myself or my office or those around that person. But I try to steer away from conflict, and then I think about it afterwards. I'm like, that's not bettering the situation. I wish I would have been more direct or said something or mapped it out a little bit clearer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get better at not being gray. And the way that you do that is not overly aggressive. It's still trying to paint the picture of both sides and have the person or myself even understand what the solution or what this moment is. But it's taking the gray away from it and making sure that person understands what I'm telling them,
sure,
or what we're trying to resolve. And then it's always too, like in the moment like this where economy's bad and we're doing a lot, and it's often breathing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, this is a moment.
Yeah.
I made it this far. It's not going to kill us right now. But it's these. I think it's a lot of maturity and balance in my mind, right? And how we choose to do more, and you have to stay strong mentally. And there's a series of things, just like you do, in terms of trying to maintain that strength and that balance, and understand how do you lead, and how do you lead is different from one person to the next, meaning your staff.
Yeah. 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 You have to show up different ways for different people.
Yeah.
With the same core values, but you have to communicate those differently to some people.
Yeah.
There's
because for you as well, if you show up and you're hanging your shoulders and your head and you're ho-hum, no one's going to follow you.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you're having a bad day, or even if you don't feel great that day, you're going to have to suck it up, and you're going to have to lead.
Show up. Yeah. 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 People need to be led, and especially on teams, and they need that confidence in somebody that is gonna, make decisions when they need to make decisions and
Mm-hmm.
be fair and show up. Yeah, and it's on those hard days. You gotta you gotta show up and not worry about your feelings and just sometimes you just gotta push through.
How about you? What are you looking at improving? Is it
My I think that I've been on a path for, I don't know, 15 years of self-development, and it has come in different. There's been different evolutions. There's been different chapters and seasons of that journey, and I look at it like some things build on other things. But just recently, it's really been about stopping giving a shit what other people think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to really,
it's hard.
To get down to that of like, well, I'm going to be okay. I don't need to worry what other people think, because I know that I'm doing the right thing. I know that I've got the right intentions. It's and it sounds kind of dumb to say all that, but because I think part of me is like, well, I'm old enough that I should have figured this out a long time ago. But the true freedom is to unhook yourself from really what other people's opinions are.
Yeah, and we live in a world where there's social media. There's like everybody's got their eyes on, or they're wanting to tout the very best things, and so it's a world these days where it's hard to push all that aside and just be.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to what you said about, it has a lot to do with having, certain conversations of not wanting to offend somebody else, not wanting to piss them off, not wanting to give them bad news, not wanting to feel uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I worried a lot about not wanting to be uncomfortable. And so I would avoid certain tough conversations because I was afraid about what they would think, and that goes for employees or clients or, but man, there's definitely a freedom in just knowing who you are and showing up as yourself, and, having the confidence in why you're doing certain things, and then being okay not controlling the outcome. Not, it's And that's what I'm thinking the most about now on a lot of different levels. But if we're, for a real time example, is we've got a client that is a very important client to us, and early on there was a lot of tough conversations, and I would dread these meetings that we had to go into and deliver bad news, because I was like, man, we a lot of us not wanting to lose the client, not wanting to get the criticism that we were going to get. And I had to get to the point where it's like, okay, well, a lot of that feedback that I'm getting from them is really just holding up a mirror, right? I'm making the meaning out of this feedback. And so I got to the point where I'm like, well, I know what we bring to the table as a company, as a team. We've got the best intentions at heart. I know that for a fact. I know that, with everybody that's on the team right now, we're doing the best we can. We're being as creative as we can. I know that, not to say we can't do better, right? But I think at the end of the day, I know what we deliver.
Yeah.
And if that's not good enough, well, then that's just not good enough. Yeah. Or if people aren't going to understand and not appreciate it, well, then they're not going to.
Yeah.
So then it scales up to the conversation of, okay, if we're going to be who we are going to be, and we're going to operate the way we're going to operate, and we know what we bring to the table, then maybe we need to go and find people that are going to align with that.
Yeah.
At all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But for me to get to that point took a lot of really a lot of thought about just not giving a shit what people think.
Yeah.
And trying to live in that freedom of, I'm going to be okay no matter what. If somebody doesn't agree with me, that's okay. If they are going to criticize, that's okay. I'm finally getting comfortable in kind of who I am, and again, it's been a lot of years to get to that point.
Sure. Yeah. I had a phone call this week, which, it's been a few. Where we started, maybe you were the same way, was I'm going to accept everything. because I can't say no.
Yeah.
If I say no, then they may go away and then I may not get work. And I was having a phone call this week and this guy called and he said trigger words. You know, there's always red flags. Yeah. And he said trigger words. And I had to tell him, I was like, you're saying all the wrong things. And, you know, I know he was a successful person and he told me his background. And I said, you know, it seems like it'd be a lot of fun working with you, but everything you're telling me now just is not appealing. And I think you should go somewhere else. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. And I could tell I caught him off guard because he's an individual that probably was not told no very often. Yeah. And it was uncomfortable and awkward. And I said, hey, best of luck to you. If if those things change, then call me back. But there's, and it's in a moment where I would say that we're not at it's a tough market. Like it's very difficult right now. And to say no in a way that you don't know what the other side is speaks to some of that maturity, I think that you're talking about.
Yeah. I've been in a lot of situations where early on anyway of taking on clients that we shouldn't have just because I wanted to work.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I always worried about, man, what's going to, if we don't sell this job, if we don't get that job, we're going to it's going to lead to more tough conversations, whether that's, conversations with employees or whatever else. But I've run into that situation a lot. And when I think back on it now, it's always worked out. It's always been fine. Yeah. I've never been sitting there not having enough work, it's always worked out. Yeah. And I think now I've resolved that with myself of, again, if you do the right thing and you're true to yourself and you know what you bring to the table, the work's going to take care. It's going to come. It's going to work out. The work for us now is going and finding more relationships that align with us.
Well, your focus starts to narrow.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So now you know what you're looking for. And it's not particularly the type of project. However, there are things that I would like to work on, but it's mostly people. Like if I can have this group, that's what I want because it makes me happy during my day.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could build dog houses, and if we could make money on it, it would be just fine.
Yeah, that's the truth. It comes down to people.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're having a little bit of an issue with a couple guys on our team right now that, just differences of vision for what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, it always seems like when you get to that point and there's, you start questioning, okay, well, did I make the right decision bringing this guy on the team?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you didn't, right? It's like when there's a little bit of smoke, then there's something there, some other people are like, wow, like from the beginning, you're like, okay, we got this right. Like these people are going to be solid. They get us. They're going to be a great, but, and then, we're trying to do more of that too. We're trying to build systems around finding those people that align with our vision and that,
that's one of the toughest parts for me or us right now is what is the right person that you want on your team that's going to help you move forward? Because we can't do it by ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And man, that's hard because everyone's different. Everybody's got their own personal desires and achievements that they want to do, and it may come into conflict with what you're trying to do. And do you ride it out or you let them go?
Yeah.
If you ride it out, then it could be too long, and then the wheels come off, and then it's not pleasant for anybody. But what I am finding though is I always thought that I always hired younger, right? And I could work with a series of individuals, get them to move and do what we need to do, but we had issues on the tail end of a project when it really required a certain level of experience, and that would fall on me, and then I would just get tired. So we have changed in a way that we're hiring more senior, and we're
Yeah.
trying to then build back down.
Sure.
And so that's different. It's different and more difficult because those older, more senior people are harder to find.
Yeah.
Because they're seasoned.
Sure.
They may not be seasoned in the way that you want them
Yeah.
to be seasoned.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a difficult transition that will, if we can figure that out, will help us be a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah. Just finding people that care, that had a conversation yesterday with an employee, and they made the comment about, he said, "You guys," and I'm like, that's an interesting, you guys, not a we.
Yeah.
Is like the way he was saying it. There's definitely creating a separation. You know what I mean? I thought, oh, that just landed wrong. Kind of like you said, like that. You just said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And now we're evaluating, like, okay, I don't know what the longevity of that person is going to be now.
There's often, we talk about it openly in the office, and that's one of those trigger words.
Yeah.
Like, it may be subliminal, and it may not resonate with the person who's saying it because it's just how they speak.
Mm-hmm.
But that's deep down inside that
100%.
That reveals a lot about
100%.
a lot about character.
Yeah, I don't think that's something that just that does come from deep down, and that definitely it gives you an insight to how they're thinking.
Absolutely,
right? It's like, are we in this together, or are we separate? And you know what I mean? And man, we value again for what we're doing, and the kind of the stakes at what we're doing. We got to have people that are on the team and that are bought in. It's a we thing. We got to do it together.
There's and it happens fairly often, but everybody gets to present. Everybody gets to talk to clients, and if they're working on the project and they're excited about this thing, and we feel confident that they can verbally deliver a presentation to a body of people, then they get that opportunity. And if I hear the word "I" in those presentations, we'll cut it. Like, we'll have a big conversation about this.
Yeah.
This is not you. Even though you did this work, it doesn't. You're not the one, right? It's us.
Yeah.
It's we. And that's a big, and that's something that people have to work on. And most of the time they don't know until you bring it up and you have that conversation, and it's real awkward.
Yeah.
And then you could tell that they're pivoting and they're trying to switch, but it's also a deep down, thing that they've, it's interesting to watch, and they may switch it verbally, but their actions may say differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, no, I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
You got it, man.
All right. It's good.
Yeah, hopefully that was good therapy talk. I was driving over, and I was thinking, I wonder if there's a survey, or there's there's something that we could
get some feedback
toward.
Yeah.
Just like, what are other business owners struggling with?
Yeah. I think that's a good format to like, I met with Sri yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'd like to get him in here and just kind of talk through.
I was thinking about that. Yeah.
From a construction standpoint, I mean, he gave me we met yesterday for about an hour, and man, he gave me 3 good nuggets of like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that, man. That was super valuable.
Yeah.
But listening to kind of what, then at the end, I always like to ask him, well, what are you guys dealing with? Cause I want to vision into what somebody with a much bigger company, like, what are you guys thinking about, and what are you doing about that?
Yeah, we can get Sri in here. That'd be good.
He said he's interested.
Yeah.
We just got to get him locked in.
I'll text him, or you can ask.
Yeah. Other, it's very valuable to listen to what other people are going through and like how they're thinking about things. And for me anyway, like, cause that's, at the end of the day, that's how we change, right? It's changing our perspective on something and then acting on it, getting feedback on it, changing our perspective on something, acting on it, and getting feedback on it.
Well, we get stuck in our own way,
Yeah.
right? And as soon as you start talking about it, it's like raising kids or having a family. You think, oh man, these we're just going about it all the wrong way, and these questions are super hard. We don't know the answers, but everybody else is going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And you'll probably find out that there's not many different struggles. It's the same struggle.
Yeah.
And maybe we approach them differently or we think about them differently, but it's the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I think at least having that conversation around what these struggles are is important.
Yeah. There's a Pink Floyd lyric that talks about that. We're all just covering the same old ground.
Yeah.
Right. Dealing with the same old pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I think it's how you think about it, and then the decision you make based on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because we all we've kind of all, I mean, with some exceptions, we've all got the same kind of playing field. We got the same amount of time in the day.
But it's also being honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm embarrassed of what I'm going through or the challenges that I have or the decisions that I made.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to talk about this out loud.
Yeah.
And so that's a part of that humility.
Yeah.
That I've been trying to do better at. Because everybody has the same stress and worries at some point.
Yeah.
That humility is also something that I've found creates more success inside an office. Mm-hmm. Right? They see us as leaders, perhaps, mm-hmm. and if you always appear to be successful and hitting everything on its top tiers, then there's no humility there. And so to share, oh man, I really fucked this up.
Yeah.
Or I'm struggling with this. Can you help? Or how did you like? I think that is one component in our office that I try to be mindful of.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a form of ownership, right? You're owning the decision. You're owning the results, good or bad.
Yeah.
And if it's, for us, as the leaders and as the owners of the company, at the end of the day, we own everything, whether we're directly involved with it or not. I mean, you have to. You can't. Again, it goes back to, hey, this is a we thing, but it's a we, but the buck stops here.
Yeah.
And that's why I really love that there's that book by Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. It's like, you can run that out to any different scenario. It's if you got in a car wreck that day and it wasn't your fault, you still chose to drive and get in your car that day. So, I mean, and you could have taken a different route. You could have driven slower. There's a lot of things you could have done. Not to say that you would have made a different decision, but just having that ownership of it.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way. It's like, man, if we fuck up, like I own that. I mean, either I didn't give you the right guidance, or I didn't train you well enough, or we didn't have the right conversation leading into something. I didn't go and double check, and I've gotten to where I love that, because now that means I've got more control.
That's also one element that we try to uncover in interviews, right? People that we bring on. Can they own their own shit?
Yeah.
And you can uncover it fairly quickly.
Yeah. Oh man, sometimes it's obvious. It's another employee issue we're having is and this, I don't know if they're gonna hear this or not, I don't care. But they there was an issue on site, and our senior PM kind of sat him down, did a review, said, hey, this didn't work. I need you to do better on this. This is how we're going to improve. And the problem was so bad, we had to relocate the person to another job. So I wanted to check in with the person and say, hey man, I'm here if you need to talk about something. I'm definitely interested in your development in the company and want you to, what happened? And the first thing out of their mouth was, it was somebody else's fault. It was like, oh, this other guy. I'm like, oh. Yep. And so, and I just, and when he said that, I was like, well, we're kind of done here, dude. Because if you're not going to take ownership over what happened, even if you even if you don't 100% agree, it's like we have to start with the fact that, hey, we own our own results.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
And the first thing out of his mouth was, well, this is somebody else's fault. We're like, oh, well, that's a non-starter right there.
Yeah.
We're kind of done now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
it's one to catch early.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, like if you don't catch it in the interview, it will surface.
100%.
It will surface
100%.
quickly.
Yeah.